Welcome to Small Town Snarks. I'm Joel.
And I'm Miranda. Let's get snarky. I can still recall
Our last summer, I still see it all. Walks along the Seine, laughing in the rain. Our last summer, memories that remain. That was lovely. That was Our Last Summer from the musical Mamma Mia.
And that's exactly how it sounded too.
But here's the funny thing, everybody. We're not talking about our full production of Mamma Mia.
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
We're talking about what would have been our big summer 2020 splash hit.
Yep.
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia Part 1.
Mamma Mia A. the Mamma Mia that never was. In addition to that conversation, we're taking a minor step to the side, away from our regularly scheduled programming.
We are.
To talk about COVID and the business.
The business.
We
love the business things.
Yeah, we do love the business things.
I feel like I should have a briefcase and a mustache.
Yeah, a mustache.
I mean, you have one.
I do have a mustache, but yeah, I mean, so we talked a bit about Godspell, Part 1.
We did.
In our last couple episodes, and in the midst of Godspell going on, you also were trying to run a business.
Yeah, business things.
Business things.
Because I'm a business lady.
You sure are. And it's you are a business lady trying to operate a business in a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic.
Yep.
Not a really great time for the arts or theater in general.
Not particularly.
Not particularly. We, my favorite thing, and I've said this about you on multiple occasions, and I've said it here on the podcast a couple times, but you have never met a challenge that you do not like to try and conquer.
That's true.
And COVID was no different.
Yep.
No different. So as we talked about with Godspell happened, or didn't happen. I'm sorry, COVID happened.
COVID happened.
Godspell did not
happen.
In the midst of us trying to figure out what a rehearsal would look like and how we were going to make this show happen, you were figuring out ways that we could keep the business running while not getting people together, while trying to keep momentum going, and trying to use new technology.
Yeah.
What did that experience feel like for you?
It was something.
Mm-hmm.
I was glad to have something to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty frustrating process.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't what I wanted to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But we made the best of it.
Sure.
And definitely, we'll get into this, but we had this program with Stevenson University, and they were also making recommendations on things we could do at the time. And that was helpful. And it was definitely the right choice to, maintain our relevancy.
Yeah.
So that was good, but it was tough. It was tough to stay motivated to keep going during that time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so to give some context, I don't believe that we talked about this during Godspell much in detail, but I'll bring this up. There was a lot going on for me. I know I talked about that, and I had made the decision in March of 2020 to step back from the board and to take a step back from the company. This conversation happened prior to the pandemic arriving. So actually, it was probably like February of 2020. You and I had a business meeting in one of our favorite places to meet for business at a Starbucks. I believe it was Starbucks.
Surprised it wasn't Panera.
It wasn't Panera.
That was usually our go-to.
But I had made that decision, and as soon as the pandemic hit, I agreed to stay on for a little bit longer, partially because it was a lot of uncharted territory. Godspell was going on, and that was kind of going to be my last big thing with the company for a while. There was no time put on that. It was going to be my last big thing. So going into this process, I still have a lot of notes from those meetings that we had, our board meetings. One of the things we can talk about this, the Stevenson conversation. It was around April, like late spring, that we had this meeting with Stevenson University about some of the opportunities and things we could be doing, and one of them was recreating our logo.
Yep.
Which I hope when we share this episode that we can share kind of what the old logo looked like and where we ended up with the current logo. I remember being on a call with all of the Stevenson students and looking at some variety, or their variety or their options of logos and recommendations. Do you remember this call?
I do, and it was super cool because, at the time, we actually, signed up with them before the pandemic hit,
Mm-hmm.
and at the time, they were just looking for a nonprofit for basically their marketing class to practice with, and we got, a free logo, free website recommendations, social media recommendations. I mean, it was awesome, but yes, I remember that call, and we were basically their client, and they were presenting logos, websites, poster designs, all sorts of things to us.
My favorite thing about the logo, and we've talked about this before, you and I and people that have been around for a while, the logo is a cityscape, but it is not a cityscape in Carroll County.
Nope.
It is of downtown Frederick. Which I think is super fun and interesting, especially people that have just been doing shows with us in Carroll County for the last several years, that, our logo is of Frederick. We'd like to reiterate that up to this point, and still to this day, we have never done a show in Frederick.
Nope.
But that was the city that the company, the county was, or that was the county that the company was established in, and that was just kind of what we were, and that's the Small Town Stars origin location. So
and I kind of love that because it shows our roots and that aspect of where we came from, but it does, you can extrapolate to any downtown city, so it does work in that aspect, but it's very reminiscent of downtown Frederick.
Yes. Yeah. So I always like to think of that whenever I see the logo. It's exactly what you said. It's a good reminder of where it all started, and your original concept was created in Frederick area. So. But yeah, so having that experience of learning from them about some of the social media opportunities, what we could do for the website, logos, that type of stuff, was so informative. And I use this. I'm a marketing professional in my day job, and I always like to use the expression the spaghetti method of marketing, and I feel like not just us, but every business at that time was trying to figure out how they could use social media to stay not only relevant, but keep their audience engaged.
Yeah.
And we very much so were using the spaghetti method of marketing during that time. And some of my favorite things that we did, we had online quizzes of my favorite was which Small Town Stars show are you? Do you remember
We should bring that back.
We should bring that back. But it was a 4 or 5 question quiz, and then at the end it would tell you what show you were.
Yeah.
And it was a genius idea.
Yeah.
Genius idea. We had that, but we also started dabbling our toes in
Dabbling our toes.
dipping our toes, I think is the proper term, but dabbling in and dipping our toes in the video creation area in Rome. So we were putting out videos. My favorite thing that I still think about to this day, there's a video out there on our social media pages. You really got to go looking for it though. But we did introductions of our board members and what we do for the company, and each one of us kind of explained some facet of the theater process, or what we enjoy doing, or what our experience was in theater. And I remember I was living in this apartment in the back of somebody, it was a house, but the back half of the house was an apartment, and that's where I was living at the time. And I remember sitting in this corner in this apartment at the dining table, recording this 25-minute long video about some topic or whatever. But seeing it recently, I was oh yeah, that was so smart that we were engaging with everybody by sharing like our own experiences and like introducing ourselves and like having that kind of engagement. So I really, really love that process. And we always joke, I have a really interesting fan group where it's, you know, it tends to be an older fan group, predominantly female fan group, and I'll never forget that video going up on our social media pages and me resharing it, and it just, everybody was a huge fan of me promoting the work I was doing with the company. So
all the older ladies out there.
I don't know what it is, and I'm grateful for them. But yeah, that video really took off.
And that's why half the time when we're doing shows, I'm like, Joel, we got to get an interview of you because we got to get your fan club interested in the show.
But yeah, so I mean, those videos were a lot of fun. Do you remember? I think you made one of them as well. I if I remember correctly.
I don't have any memory of it.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
But I do, vaguely remember doing those intro videos.
Yeah.
And again, it gave us something to do, and that was great. And I mean, we can switch gears into our little virtual cabaret.
Oh my gosh, can we please?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, so we did, I want to say like 2 or 3 of those cabarets. I remember I left the board in November of 2020. So I had stayed around for a really long, no, I'm sorry, it was probably October of 2020. Because we had a couple of Godspell rehearsals after I had already left that I was still engaged with. Yep. But I want to say it was about September maybe that we did that we did a cabaret, and I'll never forget, it was you and me and Brooks. And it might have been someone else on the board. I just remember the 3 of us at the moment performing a song from Mean Girls. And it was such a blast to like record that video, and then like Brooks kind of pieced everything together, and we had options for people to donate, and it was like this like good opportunity to allow people to still perform, but also like it was a good fundraiser for the company, and it was a good way to keep the company name out there.
Yeah, it was a really chaotic group number the 3 of us did, but yeah. It was fun, and it was good to see people sending in videos, and they could be from all around, all around the country, so that was nice that we got some people who were far away that were submitting videos to do the virtual cabaret with us.
Yeah, it just allowed us to still use our skills even though we couldn't physically be around each other.
Exactly, yeah.
We were able to work together from that standpoint, so just it's a soft spot in my heart to think back and see that stuff. And we've talked about we've gone through social media recently and looked at all of those past posts and things, and it was a really dark time, but there were a lot of really nice memories to see in there.
Yeah,
it's just hard to believe it was 5 years ago.
I know. I'm glad we have those too.
Yeah,
just to look back on it. That is nice. I also remember we put out social media posts about masks. My mom was making masks, and we were sending them to people.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And we put in like little pamphlets about small town stars in the boxes, but yeah, we were just doing what we could to help the community and stay relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I remember that summer, in addition to just encouraging and promoting and supporting the community through pandemic, support, it was also a summer of societal. There were a lot of things happening in society at that time, and we were making sure that we were staying active and supporting those causes as well throughout the summer and throughout the fall. I know we started out this episode talking about Mamma Mia.
Yes.
And I would love to discuss that some more.
Yeah.
Do you remember, I have a faint memory of us discussing doing Mamma Mia that summer. And I want to say it was like shortly after Legally Blonde ended that we were already in talks of like what that next show was going to be.
That's correct.
And if I remember correctly, there was a period of time, and I'll have to jump back a little bit, between Legally Blonde and Godspell when the board was getting together and we were cataloging costumes. Do you remember this process?
Yes.
So anyone that's done shows with us or has gone through the garage, you may have seen little index cards on some of the costumes. That was from our process of trying to catalog every costume that we had.
We tried.
We did. But I remember, if I'm remembering this correctly, I remember us being at one of those costuming days, and we were discussing doing Mamma Mia, and I think that was when we had made that final decision of like, okay, great, we're going to do this. And we locked it in, and it was going to be Godspell and Mamma Mia coming at you in 2020.
Yeah.
We had auditions scheduled. Do you remember when auditions were supposed to be? I have the exact date because that's just...
I'm going to guess early May.
Yes, so it was May 9th and 10th of 2020. Auditions were scheduled. And looking back at our meeting notes, we were receiving, even after the pandemic had started and we were going through the early months of, wearing a mask and people staying home, we were still receiving auditions from people. Auditions had been moved to being all video.
Yeah.
And we were still receiving auditions from people throughout the month of April.
Yeah.
And again, we were hopeful. We had rescheduled Godspell several times, and that was supposed to be the end of May at that point. So we were hopeful that we'd be able to get in and do auditions for Mamma Mia and get the ball rolling with that.
Wow, that's just crazy to think about,
right?
That we were still receiving videos when we were in lockdown.
But that just showed that people were, at that point we didn't know how long it was going to be, and people were hopeful that if things did open up, that they wanted to be involved in a show. They wanted to participate in theater again. And they didn't want to miss out on an opportunity to do a show like Mamma Mia. And at that point in time, people weren't doing, the rights had just come out for Mamma Mia. It was not a new, it was definitely still a new property for community theaters to be able to perform. So I think that was also a really big thing for them as well, of okay, well, the show's happening. It's a happy show. All of this stuff has been going on. We want to be able to do it. Let's take this opportunity while we can. But looking at those notes that I had from those meetings, I'm like, wow, people are still engaged, and they still wanted the show to happen.
Do you remember our little teaser we put out for people to guess what show we were doing?
Oh my gosh, yes! The series of photos that we did. I remember specifically the 3 men and a baby one.
That was our last one because we knew everyone would get it at that point.
I'm a big fan, and I love when theater companies do this. There's some other ones in this area that have been doing this more and more frequently now, but I love when you have people guess. It keeps people engaged, and they really, it's different when it's a show that people are like, oh, I'm not super excited about that, but when people are really excited about a show and you get to have them guess, that makes a huge difference. But yes, I do remember those guesses, and I think that was all part of that social media strategy during that time of okay, great, we need to keep people engaged. Let's toss out some guesses for people.
And it was so much fun. People were so excited.
Yeah.
And I do remember contacting the licensing company and trying to move the show.
Mm-hmm.
And when we ended up moving it to 2021...
Which, spoiler alert, it didn't happen then either.
Oh, sorry. I meant 2022.
Oh, I thought it got pushed to 2021 first.
I think it did, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I filled out paperwork to push it to 2021,
mm-hmm.
and then we decided we needed to move it again. When I went to move it again, MTI was like, you might not get it. Be prepared not to get it because it's going on tour. And I remember panicking. I was like, everyone's so hyped to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally got it. But they took forever to approve it. But whatever. It was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. And that's that won't be the first time that we are stressed out about whether or not we're going to get rights to a show because of tours. Looking at a certain one that was supposed to happen this year that didn't get approved. But we'll talk about it. We'll get there.
And that show will happen eventually.
It will. I can't wait. Looking forward to it. Big plans. But I just that summer and being so hopeful to do a show that we knew was going to really be a hit for the community. It was hard. I mean, we were very optimistic that was going to happen, and it just wasn't in the cards. But fortunately, and I say this, thinking about the people that are in this room right now, but it happened at the right time.
It did.
Yes, and so many positive things came out of that. So that's something that at the time we weren't thinking about, but in hindsight,
For sure.
Super great. I do want to ask you, we talked briefly about this in our last episode about the vaccine.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like for you when you knew a vaccine was coming?
It was like, sign me up.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get in there soon enough.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, I mean, the idea that the end was in sight.
Yes.
Was so huge. And then we ran into other logistical things of, are we going to make sure people are vaccinated to do shows moving forward? What is that going to look like? All those things. What happens when someone does get COVID? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But, nonetheless, I signed up as soon as I could. I got it as soon as I could. Mm-hmm. I was so excited to get the second dose. It was just... And, like most people, I don't like getting shots,
mm-hmm.
but the idea that this was a small sacrifice I could make to get back to normal, to get back to doing what I love was so huge.
For sure.
I remember even, like, getting the vaccine, it was just a huge room
mm-hmm.
of people, and you would walk up, and you would just sit, in the front of the room, and they would just give you the shot, and then you had to sit there for...
10 minutes or whatever it was.
15 minutes, I think, to make sure you didn't have a reaction, and then you were good to go, but, it was a big relief. How about you?
To give some context, by that point I had already stepped away from the company.
Mm-hmm.
It was very strange. So I, like most theater people, thrive, and most of my hobbies are focused around being around other people.
Right, amusement parks and
theater. And fortunately in 2020, amusement parks had kind of managed to stay open with everyone being outdoors. I didn't go to any of them, but a lot of them were able to be open and operating to some extent throughout. But I was so ready to get back to a theater. And I'll mention this. Coming to... We'll talk about Puffs as our next show on the horizon. But for me, getting that vaccine meant that, like, I could go back out and do all of those things that I loved. I also went during this time... we talked about, like, for me, 2020 or 2019 was a really rough time for me, and into 2020 was a really rough time for me. But that also, from a health standpoint, was a really good time for me. I went through a dramatic weight loss from, like, the end of 2019 through, like, the beginning of 2021 with the pandemic. So for me, it was super exciting going in and getting that vaccine, being able to go back out and do the things that I loved, and being healthy, and just being grateful for that. And, like, I remember getting my second vaccine, and by, like, 5 days later, I was like, okay, great, I'm going to an amusement park. I'm like, I need to go. I need to be back out there. I need to do stuff. And then, we'll talk about it with Puffs, but, like, that was really my first time, if I'm remembering correctly, back in a legitimate theater to see a play. I had gone to the movies up to that point, but, like, being back in a theater was, like... You didn't know what you were doing. You had a mask on, but, like, you're like, okay, great, I'm going to sit here with all these people. We're going to see a show, and it's going to be quite the experience. And it was... I kind of get emotional just thinking about it. Just, like, that was a long time. That was 12... Puffs was July. It was 16 months. And then, don't even get me started about being back in a Broadway theater for the first time. That didn't happen until September, and that was an overwhelming experience. But, like, that vaccine meant so much to the things that I was passionate about. Mm-hmm. So having that opportunity was just huge. And it was, especially after everything we had gone through as far as the operations of things and, like, trying to figure out how to proceed, that then opened up a whole nother can of worms of, like, how do people move forward? And, like you said, do people need to be vaccinated to participate? Do people, what does that look like?
Right.
Again, we talked a lot about society's expectations and how, people were seeing those who were vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and, like, the policies kept changing. People should be wearing a mask. People shouldn't be wearing a mask. Right. People needed to be vaccinated to go to a show or to do whatever. And, like, adapting to that was a whole nother thing, which I'm really looking forward to exploring in these upcoming shows, because it is a factor in, I think about it. I mean, the next few shows we're going to be addressing are Puff's Little Shop and Godspell Part 2.
Yep.
And for at least the 3 of those, and, we'll move into Odd Couple and some other shows into 2022, but, for at least those 3 shows in 2021, COVID is present.
Oh, yeah.
And it is a hot topic for a lot of those shows.
Yeah.
And how we went about keeping people safe, what the expectations looked like, how it came very close to a lot of those shows, and how we, managed and adapted to those situations.
For sure. Are we ready to talk about going into our
new venue?
venues?
I would love to talk about our new venue switch.
So in order to do this,
yeah,
I have to backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
And we gotta bring up Karen again.
Yes.
Our dear friend.
Karen is about to become main character
Yep,
energy here for a couple years.
Yeah. In 2019.
Yes.
After she had emailed me post Legally Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation started as, we're going to go in on this together, our groups are going to go in this together, we're going to be partners, we're going to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of phrased it as, I don't have a job, so I'm going to manage everything. Also, we have this other nonprofit that is in charge of managing companies, so we're gonna manage it. And I remember talking to her, and I was like, hey, I'd be interested in participating in the management of this. And it was like, oh, yeah. And we saw this venue in Westminster that was formerly an opera house.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And she let me in.
Do you remember when that was? Was that end of 2019? Sorry to interrupt, but...
It was, yeah.
Okay, because I remember going.
Yeah, it was.
And I also remember meeting Karen for the first time at her house. That was my first time meeting.
Did we talk about that already?
We did not talk about that. No, this was pre my departure.
So, before we get to the opera house, we got to talk about our first meeting.
Yes, of course.
We met Karen at her house.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just going to set the scene. This isn't me judging, these are just facts of what happened. Mm-hmm. And you can make judgments if you want.
Sure.
Behind her were aggressively large framed copies of the Constitution.
Yes.
And the Declaration of Independence.
That is correct.
I'm not going to make a comment on that. It's just what was there.
Yeah, just setting the scene.
Yep, just setting the scene.
Sure.
And we're all sitting there. At one point... This is so funny. Her son comes downstairs and says, Mom, you never pay attention to me. You're always on your phone. In front of a group of strangers.
Oh, goodness.
But we sat there, we chatted. We chatted about, what we wanted.
Yeah.
It was a good meeting.
The state of theater.
Mm-hmm. She had a little stage in her basement, which I thought was interesting.
That's right.
She used to rehearse out of her basement, which, again, these were things that I was like, oh, I can relate. I used to rehearse out of the basement.
Yep.
And we went to leave, and I remember her son said something like, are these people going to work with you? And she said something like, oh, I hope so, buddy. I hope so. And I remember just thinking how much of like a movie moment that almost was. And then we left, and we went to McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was like, oh, it's going to happen. We're going to get a space. I'm so excited, blah, blah, blah. And almost everyone else was like, take a breath. We just don't know. We just don't know what's going to happen there.
I would like it to be said, we talk about this to this day. Sometimes I exaggerate, but I will like to say, in this particular situation, I had major red flags after that first meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And I was vocal about them at the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's no question Karen is very good at saying exactly what you want to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
And
better than anyone else I've ever known.
Yeah, and that was what I was struggling with. The red flags were there, but
you could look past them.
I could look past them because she was saying all the things that I wanted to hear, all the things that I had been thinking about and dreaming about in terms of doing full seasons of shows.
Yes.
So, fast forward a little bit, we saw the Opera House together.
Yes. What a wild space.
Yeah.
With the pool on the roof.
There was a pool on, like, the third floor, and a round bed. You remember that?
I do remember the round bed, yeah.
Was there a mirror above the bed, or am I making that up?
I honestly think that there was, but I don't remember off the top of my head. It's so funny to think about that space, and like every once in a while when I'm driving through downtown Westminster, I just think of the fact that like that space is in that city. Like I just...
Yeah, it's really bizarre. So I remember walking through the Opera House with her, talking about the different possibilities, and I mean, it was exciting. Like, there was an actual space there, and someone was putting money into it, and it was like, okay, like, this could be a thing. So, we had talked about working together, we were exchanging schedules, all these things, and things already started getting weird. I remember I took a trip to Europe after I graduated college, so this was after Legally Blonde, and I got an email from her while I was there, basically saying, like, actually my other nonprofit is just going to take care of all the logistics, we don't need you to. And just little things like that kind of kept coming up that I was like, she said we were going to be partners, but I'm getting the vibe that maybe that's not what's happening. It's a very loose
term for partners, yeah.
So, as we went through COVID, she was still talking about these different spaces. And then when we got to Before Puffs, so it was probably early 2021, she called me. She said she has this really exciting space. It used to be a high school. And she wanted me to come look at it with her. So I did, and Dakota went with me. She had a technician coming in who was going to rig all the lights, who was going to do the sound. She's walking me through that building. I mean, like grand plans for everything. You know, we're gonna put a loading dock here. Here we can store all our costumes. Here we can do this. Here we're gonna do that. And guess what? For the first 6 months, you don't have to pay anything. You don't have to pay anything until the space is fully under contract, and then you're only going to have to pay X agreed upon amount, which I don't remember exactly what the amount was, but we had talked about it many times, and I confirmed with her many times, this is what it's going to be when we have to pay, right? Oh, yeah. That's totally reasonable. Yeah, that's what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. So, I was super excited. And it didn't matter that we had seen all these red flags. I was like, this is a space. We're getting out of COVID. I want to be doing shows. We talked about this before. Renting venues, extremely expensive. I couldn't do full seasons with renting the art center every time. So as we got into this, like, we started moving all our costumes over. We started, like, you know, really getting into the space, and we were going to do puffs there. And it started very well, and that's where I'll leave it on that note. But we're starting to move in, and things are going to get
do we move
crazy.
In? Do we ever move in?
We move in, and when we leave,
we're leaving.
We're leaving. We're about to go on a journey.
Yes. If you are new to Small Town Snark, stay tuned. I hope you're not brand new to just this episode, but if you are, welcome.
Welcome. We're happy to have you.
The tea it's starting to steam. It's starting to get hot.
Well, when word got out that we were going to potentially be working with Karen and her company just on sharing a space,
Mm-hmm.
I did get phone calls from some people that, had concerns after, having worked with her in the past. And they did share some information about her doing some stuff at, like, show cast parties that I personally would consider to be inappropriate as the director and, someone in a leadership role at the company. So it did set off some red flags for me, and I know the two of us had talked about, like, okay, we know this person makes decisions when they're in a leadership role that we don't align with, and how do we take advantage of this opportunity to be able to use the space regularly but keep our companies separate and make sure it's clear that our companies are separate and that our values are different, or mission statements can be different things. So basically, I'm not going to get into too much detail about what was told to me. If those people come on for interviews and they want to say what they witnessed, they are more than welcome to. But I just wanted to bring it up as, it was kind of the first time that we had our guard up about this person. And I think that's relevant for the stories that are to come. So we had our guard up, but we were still, it wasn't bad enough where we were willing to pull out of what could be a good opportunity for us. So we were entering with caution. And that is when we start to go into the building that was a former high school in the community.
Okay. That sets up the situation nicely for our next episode. We're going to get ourselves ready because Puffs is on the horizon.
And listen, if anything happens to me, you know who did it. This is our tell-all, I feel like.
Oh my. Gosh. Anything else you want to add there, Miranda, for this episode?
Well, if you're listening, know that it's possible we cut half of this episode because I'm having second thoughts. But we're here to spill the tea.
We're
here to spill our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we were told.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
We are just here to say our truth.
Mm-hmm.
And these were all things that happened to us.
Mm-hmm.
And however you interpret them is yours to interpret.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Karen, if you're listening, anytime you want to come on, we'd love to talk to you about all these things.
To talk to you.
I would love to hear your side of this story.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to clear the air. If we're wrong, please tell us and correct us on the air.
Mm-hmm.
Please, I'd love to hear about it.
We're ready. We're here.
We're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Come on down.
The seat's open for you.
The seat is open.
Mm-hmm.
But this was just our truth, and it's a crazy one.
Mm-hmm.
But we've talked about sharing this information for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the platform to do it, and I think it's important that people listen to these stories, and hopefully by listening to this, when you hear similar red flags in your own life,
Mm-hmm.
you can make the decision that maybe it's not worth it just because someone is telling you everything you want to hear. Maybe you recognize those flags earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and you say, yeah, I'm gonna go at my own speed and not engage with you.
Mm-hmm.
But we engaged,
Yeah.
and because of it, we have a lot of stories.
Oh, yes. Yes. We sure do. This is not the last time. The stories with Karen are just beginning.
Oh, they are.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of them.
I do have a lot of
You even
Karens.
block her at one point.
I did have to block her at one point. Actually, I think she's still blocked. I don't know. Probably. I would be shocked if she wasn't.
I mean, she should be. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is she gonna say to you?
Well, I know she's not blocked on somebody else's phone, but we'll get to that story here at some point down the road.
It's very true.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
Yeah. So,
All right, well, Karen,
Snarkies.
I hope you have a great day.
Yes, me too, Karen. I really do hope you have a great day.
And Snarkies, I hope you have a better day.
Oh my gosh. All right, we'll be back with Puffs next episode.
All right, if you're a puff,
You're a puff
you're
all
a puff.
the way.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for getting snarky with us. We'll see you later.
See you next time.